Earlier this week, Massachusetts Congressman Richard Neal of the 1st Congressional District officially asked the Internal Revenue Service for President Donald Trump's tax returns for the years 2013 through 2018, in his role as the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. He's been under pressure to do so for months by many, including organizations such as the Need to Impeach campaign headed by billionaire Tom Steyer. President Trump refused to release his tax information both during his election campaign and since becoming president, citing an audit as his reason for not doing so. In requesting the information, Congressman Neal said he wanted to, quote, ensure the accountability of our government and elected officials. Representative Neal sat down with me in the studio to discuss the request for the president's tax returns.
The IRS requires or suggests to the American people that they should retain 6 years of tax returns for purpose of perhaps being audited. We decided that we did not want to lose a court case based on the technicality of asking for more than the IRS actually would require.
And you said your request is about policy, but not politics. What did you mean by that?
The last 8 presidents have all released their tax forms. And I think that the precedent that was established even by President Nixon through President Ford, they all voluntarily submitted their tax forms. And in fact, President Ford was audited. And clearly, Vice President Rockefeller was audited. And I point out that there is a nonpartisan agency called the Joint Committee on Taxation, which is made up of professionals who are fully capable of doing the audit or reviewing the president's tax forms. So I want to make this very clear. This is about policy. We have resisted politics. We did not link this to the Mueller report. We did not link this to some nefarious undertaking. Instead, I think we took a very measured position, as I insisted that we would from day one. And apparently, I think that the reaction that you've seen from people overwhelmingly is, at least as to form, we did it the right way.
And President Trump has said that he would release his tax forms if he weren't being audited. And I understand that even though you're under audit, you can still release your tax forms. But do you know for a fact if the president is being audited at this point? Because recently, the president's former attorney, Michael Cohen, indicated to a congressional committee that he feels the president wasn't under audit.
Well, Section 6103, I think, invites a great test case as to the applicability of this law and to make sure that the requests that we make within the parameters of the law will be fully tested. And I think the best way to do that is to make sure that we put the full magnifying glass in terms of critical analysis on top of the request. And clearly, I think that there's an opportunity for eventually the courts to determine what the word shall means, because in the end, I think it's going to come down to pretty much that word. It doesn't say here maybe, it doesn't say here if, it says upon request from the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee or the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, the president or whomever shall submit their tax forms.
Well, the White House apparently is building its case against that right now, and as you indicated, this could end up in federal court. Some say it could end up all the way at the Supreme Court, which would take, several months, perhaps, a year or two before it actually were ruled on.
Well, there's one thing that's important about the federal court system, and that is that they embrace precedent, they embrace the nature of established law, and they, in fact, then make determinations. It's not necessarily based on the timetable of an election or a campaign cycle, and I think we're all better off for it. So I'm hopeful that it will be expedited, but I also assume that this is going to head to court in the not-too-distant future.
I'm wondering if those tax reform returns are released, who gets to see them? You obviously as chairman of the committee, but who else sees those returns?
That's a great question. You cannot summarily or arbitrarily just release the tax forms if one were to receive them. That is a clear violation of federal law. So that's why I think it would be a good idea to have professionals who are nonpartisan to review the forms, and then the Ways and Means Committee would have the opportunity at that point to decide through an up or down vote with full transparency as to whether or not the forms ought to be released to the American people. I understand the role that privacy plays in terms of the manner in which we file our taxes. And at the same time here, I think that we need to be circumspect about how we proceed. And I think that we ought not to even contemplate the violation of federal law other than adhering to the full procedures of what federal law dictates.
You've given the IRS Commissioner until April 10th, I believe, to respond to your request. If you don't hear back, what is your next step? What do you do next?
Well, we're anticipating that we're in the midst of building a case. So we will certainly notify them through another letter, and then we will determine, based on, again, a period of time that will be fairly brief, that we will then proceed to, again, I think in this instance here, taking another step.
Would that include a subpoena, for example?
We have a strategy.
Which is still being worked on, obviously.
Actually, we have the strategy.
Okay. But you won't tell me what it is.
That's exactly right.
I don't know if you heard the president's response when he learned of your request. He said, and I'm quoting now, is that all, meaning the 6-year period? Usually it's 10. And President Trump added, so I guess they're giving up. What do you make of a comment like that, given the official request?
We're not giving up.
What are you specifically looking for, Congressman Neal, in those returns? Is there anything, any questions, any issues that you have in the back of your mind you'd like to see answered if, in fact, you do see those returns?
Our intent is not mischievous. Our intent is to test a federal law that has been on the books since 1924 and to apply the full tenor of that law to the request that we've made and to make sure that that law, under, again, the magnifying glass, stands up. So we're going to defend the congressional prerogative here. I highlighted before the Hampden County Bar Association last week in a speech that I made that oversight responsibility for legislative function dates at least to Magna Carta. It is part of the Jeffersonian notion of how the legislative branch might oversee the executive branch. After all, in some measure, that's a reflection of why the American Revolution was fought. And I think that congressional intent is very important here. We have a very important oversight responsibility in Congress as it relates to the executive. It has been tested before. Congress is mentioned as the first branch of government for that very purpose. And I hope that the President here will voluntarily comply with the request that we have made. This is not I think, an ask on our side that is not without merit.
As I understand it, besides the President's personal tax years, you're also asking for tax information relating to 8 business entities.
It's pretty much encompassing the idea that many of the President's business interests are intertwined in what we would call in the tax world part of his personal income taxes, yes. I'm going to be very careful what I have to say here because
I understand.
I am a petitioner in what is likely to have a substantial legal consequence.
Generally speaking, the response has been favorable in terms of the way and manner in which you went about this, very methodically from a legal point of view to dot your I's, cross your T's legally. Wanted to get your reaction to a comment that Republican Senate Chairman Charles Grassley made. And he was very critical of the Democrats, saying that they dislike him, meaning President Trump, with a passion. They want his tax returns to destroy him. What do you make of rhetoric like that? That
this was not motivated by malevolence. So I think in this instance here, what Chairman Grassley has to say, and he's a friend of mine, I think that what Chairman Grassley had to say is nonsense.
Are you feeling the heat a little in your position now as chairman of Ways and Means Committee, having made this formal request? Are you feeling a little heat from the Republican side of Congress now, or not?
I think if people could say that no other American president has ever submitted their tax forms, then I could understand that people might suggest, well, this was an ill-considered strategy. But when you have, as I noted earlier in the interview, when you have 8 American presidents in succession who have all previewed their tax forms for the American people, I don't think that there's any sense here that one would be feeling any heat over this now.
And any final thoughts as this issue moves forward now? You've made the request, obviously, officially, but what should we be looking out from here on out? And any final thoughts the way this is progressing?
I think one of the things that we're trying to call attention to as well simultaneously is the notion of proportionality. We passed in Ways and Means Committee 2 big retirement bills this week, some reform of the IRS. We also are going to proceed to some prescription drug bills next week. So the normal work of Congress simultaneously is underway. And I've tried very hard to point out that this is but one issue in the lexicon of public debate. And so I'm not of a mind to say that this is all we're doing. And I don't want the idea to be made, as Speaker Pelosi has correctly pointed out, that, again, that this is some notion of conspiracy, because it's really not. This is a notion of sound public policy.